Hey, good morning, everybody. I wanted to chat a little bit. I think I've mentioned before, I have a fairly long commute into work, and I always like to spend the time on my way to work just thinking and reflecting. It's a great time for that. So I'm going to try making some little videos. We'll see if you like them or not. What I'll do is I'll post these in such a way that you can watch them or listen to them as like a podcast, short podcast, and then I'll also include like a cleaned up transcript so you can, if you'd rather read them. So hopefully that way I'm doing something that works for everybody. One other thing I'll say, I know I've gotten some well-meaning and loving feedback before that I shouldn't make these while I'm driving, and I totally understand that. But it's just such a good time for me, and I don't really have a lot of time otherwise. So I'm gonna make a promise that I will not look at the camera unless I'm like at a stop sign or something. So I'm just looking straight ahead. So there's a few things that have really been on my mind parenting-wise lately. And if you've been reading my stuff lately, this is thematically, you'll understand. I've already been talking about some of it. But let me tell you why I think your children are going to turn out well and why you are going to be a success as a parent. Now, before I go further, let me just give you my bona fides on this and why I think you should listen to me and why it's not just some, positive mental attitude rambling of some guy on the internet. So I directed my first play when I was fairly young. I've been doing plays now, meaning like directing plays in schools. I'm so bad at math. It's approaching 40 years. It's maybe a few shy of 40 years. So in that time, I've worked with thousands of parents. I've seen thousands of parents, I think, probably. That's a long time to do this. I've been teaching, so I've been around schools and parents specifically for 40 years. I've been teaching officially, I'm pretty sure it's like I'm in my 24th year of teaching. And when I taught in New York City, by the way, before my current job, I was in a different school every single day. So I saw, in the course of a week, I saw lots and lots of students and got to know lots and lots of parents. So I've seen a lot of parents, and I guess that's the thing I'm trying to say. One thing I've noticed is that often people who are the most conscientious parents, who are working the hardest, are the most critical of themselves and are the most fearful that they're not doing it right. So if you, first of all, if that's you, I just want to reassure you, you're probably doing great, because I've never seen a careless, sloppy, thoughtless parent who was worried that they weren't doing enough. The only people I've seen worried generally are people who are really thoughtful about it. I think that it's important also to realize something. This is kind of critical, actually. And here's what that is. We had, years ago at school, we had a really eminent developmental psychologist come, did just an incredible professional development for the faculty. That night, they had a session where parents could come and hear him speak and then ask him, this is a guy who, you never could go see him. If you wanted to try to go see him, you just wouldn't be able to get in. His fee was very significant. But the school brought him in and opened it up to parents. I think 3 people came. Maybe it was 4. At least one of whom was actually a staff member who came back that night as well. So, I was listening. I was looking at the list of who actually came. I thought, wow, all of these people are really pretty A-list parents. All of these people are, they're not perfect, but they're very conscientious parents, and they really try. They're engaged, and their kids are great. I'll say that now this is 15 years ago, so their kids are grown up and they turned out wonderfully. And I was like, wow, I guess this is probably why they're good parents, is they show up at things like this. They go to seminars and they read books and they do all these things, and that over the years they must have absorbed really good parenting skills. Well, I have a different thought on that now. And I think that it wasn't that they went to these and therefore learned to be good parents. Although I don't discount that. Like, you can, like anything, parenting is a skill you can learn, and the more you learn, the better you are, right? Like, that's not nothing. But here's what I think now, though. And this is what I've decided with all those years of experience and all those thousands of parents I've met and worked, maybe tens of thousands, I don't know. Anyway, I think that what happened was these parents were engaged. They were thoughtful, conscientious parents who, made their parenting a high priority and wanted to do well. And because of that, they sought out opportunities to learn. So they went to seminars and they went to hear speakers and they read books. But it wasn't that they learned some magical combination of skills and things from those speakers, although I'm sure it helped them. I think it's that they were engaged. I think those parents were always going to be successful because they were engaged. So what I'm saying is, if you are the kind of person who listens to parenting podcasts, if you read books or Substacks, if you, try to understand about development of your child or about parenting, or if you try to stand, if you do anything like that, I think your kids are going to be successful. I think you're going to be successful as a parent because you are engaged and because you're attentive and because you're focused on being a parent. We had, I don't know, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, where people had to be parents without any resources, any, speakers, podcasts, nothing like that. They just had to parent. And I mean, that's really been kind of, for the common march of history, that's really been the norm. And yet somehow humanity survived. Like, not perfectly, we all can point to little probably scars and things like that, or things we wish our parents would have done. But as a whole, I just don't believe you have to have a lot of specialized knowledge to be a good parent. I think you have to care. I think you have to be engaged. And those are the things. Parenting is not a specialized set of skills or words that you deploy in precisely the right way at the right time. I really think that's a misnomer that's crept into us, like, subconsciously. I don't know that anyone would say that, but I think we almost see parenting sometimes as like engineering or something. You have to have exactly the right equation to understand the particular forces at work, and you have to, have this, it's a very precise, or we see it like as a Harry Potter sort of thing where we have to, repeat the right words with exactly the right motion of the wand, and with exactly the right internal, combination of feelings and things like that. And if we do all of those things right, then we get the result we want. I think, honestly, and I really believe that a lot of this is driven by the fact that a lot of us have our first introduction to parenting by watching TV. And the family sitcom has been a staple of TV watching in America for a long time now, since the 50s. One of the common tropes or patterns is that there's a problem, the child has a problem, or the family has a problem, and then, in the last few minutes usually, the parent or some other wise figure sits down and, with a short talk, everything is fixed. Or, they give the child some advice or something like that. And with just the right words applied at the right time, suddenly, poof, the problem's fixed. And I think that we have internalized that a lot. I also think that the rise of experts in so many fields has made us afraid to just trust our own gut. I think having specialized knowledge is great, don't get me wrong, but I do think it becomes too easy to assume that we can't do anything if we don't have the same specialized knowledge. And that may be true if you're trying to, put someone on the moon or invent a cure for cancer, but for parenting, all of that stuff is helpful. It's icing on the cake, it's gravy, whatever, but it's really not necessary. Parenting, I'm convinced now. So my youngest child is now 18, youngest of 5, and I've been very retrospective since he turned 18. Now they're all legally adults, at least. Not all emotionally adults, but we're working on that. At any rate, I am convinced that parenting is a conversation. It is a conversation that occurs over years, decades even. It is engagement. It's not a one-time conversation. It's not a big gesture. It's just continuing conversation. And the great thing about that is that takes off the pressure for any one specific conversation. Does not have to bear the weight of all of your parenting. Like, you're not putting all your chips on this one parenting conversation hoping it will solve the problem. Rather, you're engaging in a whole lot of conversations about different things over the years. And those conversations will shift, they'll evolve, they'll be different based on where your child's at. But if you can just think of parenting as engagement, sustained engagement, a conversation over a long period of time, a conversation with your child, also with yourself, because you're always, you're not being critical of yourself, but you're always trying to just sort of take feedback and think and process and, kind of sift through your parenting and think, oh, you know what, I think that was actually pretty good, or, you know what, if I could do that again, I'd like to change that. There's a great, I think, analogy. My field is theater, and when you're performing, you can feel the audience, like you can sense the audience, and you can just tell if they're with you or if their attention's beginning to wander a bit. You can tell if they're just like engaged and hanging on everything. You can tell if they're ready to laugh or if they're moved, emotionally to tears. I mean, you can just feel it. And what happens is the more experience a performer gets, the better they're able to internalize this feedback from the audience. And it's 1,000 things. It's how many feet do you hear shuffling, and how much, how long does laughter go after a joke? And I mean, there's tons of little constant inputs. And a skilled performer, an experienced performer, is not only focusing on trying to do their lines, or sing their song or their choreography or whatever, they're actually doing all that, but they're working on that connection and they're responding to that connection. I think that's a great analogy for parenting. We're not trying to be critical of ourselves, but we are trying to be responsive and attentive. Now, the caveat there is that children, adolescents, teens are not a very good audience all the time. Like, they don't come, you may get signals from them that don't mean that make it sound like you're doing a bad job, and you're really not. It's just that but nevertheless, over time, you can kind of get a sense, I think, of how you're doing. What's your connection to your child? Are you guys close? Do you talk? Do you have a sense of what's going on roughly in their life? I mean, just little things. Again, there's tons and tons of inputs, and you don't want to overly focus or obsess about any one or two of those inputs. You just kind of want to be aware and attentive. If you do those things, I really believe. Now, here's the other thing, though, is you have to really do them. You can't, it's too easy sometimes. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm just going to have a conversation. And, you don't expect anything of your child. You don't push them to do things. You don't help them develop grit. There is active work. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. It's not just all a kind of a free-floating, very Zen-like conversation. But the conversation continues. That's the through line. Then there's other things the conversation's the Christmas tree maybe, and then there's lights and ornaments that have to go along with it. Those are specific incidents and specific things you help them learn, and so on. I want to actually do a whole post about what I think the critical lessons are. What does your child need to learn in middle school or in their young teen years? What are the things that will develop naturally, and what should you really focus on helping them learn? That'll be a different post, I think. So at any rate, I just want to go back to this, what I think is very encouraging. If you're engaged, if you're listening to this and reading this, you're almost I feel really confident you're going to be successful as a parent, and your kids are going to be great, because not because you're going to hear something from me or for any other person out there who, just gives you the magic words. but because you're engaged and you're thinking about it, and you love your kids, you're trying to be a good parent, you're going to keep trying over their lifetime, so don't feel bad if you get something wrong, because you've got a whole lifetime to do this. You're going to be great. Your kids are going to be great. All right. I genuinely believe that. I'm not just saying that as kind of a nice thought, like I said. At any rate, so happy parenting. When I say that, I genuinely mean that, because I believe when we're parenting in the right way, there will be stressful times, and there will be times that we are unhappy and that our child is unhappy, and it's difficult. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about momentary, consistent bliss. There are hard times, but over time, when we're engaging with our children, it can be joyful, and we can actually be happy, even if it's not happy at every moment. So I always close with saying happy parenting, and then I always close by saying you've got this, and I really mean that. Like, I genuinely believe just some time and effort, sustained thought, asking for help if you need it. Sometimes it is helpful to get specialized answers, but I think we default to that too much. You really do have this. So I wish you happy parenting, and I assure you that you really do have this. Catch you later.